Good morning, everyone. I'm Kevin Allen, and I'm joined by my usual broadcast partner, former NHL defenseman Tom Laidlaw, who played 11 seasons for the New York Rangers and Los Angeles Kings. This is the Laidlaw and Allen Report. We come to you twice a week to talk all things hockey and a little cooking and a little everything else.
Yeah.
Well, let's start out talking about hockey because I got a lot of things I want to discuss with you. And I want to start with Troy Terry. Troy Terry played for the U.S. Olympic team in 2018, and he was one of the better players on that team. After that Olympics, people thought he was going to go to the NHL, have a quality NHL career, but it didn't happen that way. He's sort of been up and down for this is his fourth year, I think, could be his fourth or fifth season. And in his first 130 games, he had 15 goals. And all of a sudden, he's 24 years old now. He gets a greater opportunity, expanded opportunity. He's got 21 goals now, and we're not even at the halfway point of the season. He got a hat trick last night. How do you explain that, Tom? You're a former NHL player. You've seen this happen. Usually it does not take a forward this long to figure it out. Maybe a defenseman, certainly a goalie, but usually not a forward. So what's your take on that?
It makes me think back. Do you remember Dan Cleary?
Yeah.
I ended up having a pretty good career at the end there with the Detroit Red Wings, but he was a high first-round draft pick, bounced around, I think, Chicago and Phoenix and all these different places. And it was the same kind of thing. You're like, what's wrong with this guy? Why isn't he getting it going? But then all of a sudden he found that right role in Detroit. And ultimately, it wasn't the role that I think people thought he was going to have as a goal scorer when he first started. So a little bit different than Terry. But, I just think it's a maturity thing in a lot of cases. Again, I don't know this player, but was the game so easy for him when he was younger? He just showed up to the rink and played, didn't really put the work into it, really didn't understand the game that well. Now he gets to the NHL and gets humbled a little bit, realize, okay, geez, I have to work harder. I have to understand the game better. I really don't know, but I have seen that happen where young kids come in and they just think the game is going to be easy for them because they're so talented hockey players, but they realize, man, there's a lot of talented hockey players. That's the thing for me when I first started. I joked around about this before, but it's really the truth. Like, I really thought coming out of college, I was the toughest guy in the planet, and I was going to come in and fight everybody in the National Hockey League. Then you get to the National Hockey League, and then there's Clark Gillies, there's Bob Nystrom, there's Paul Holmgren, there's Ben Wilson, on and on and on around the league. You realize, this is the best of the best in that category as fighters. Same thing with goal scorers, right? I mean, you think you're a great goal scorer. Now you get to the NHL, and there's a lot of good goal scorers, right? So a lot of good goal scorers on your own team that you now have to try to really compete against for ice time. So to me, when I see that happen, I think, okay, well, obviously, guys got the talent to do it. It's the mental part that he's missing, and now he's figured it out. So, yeah.
Well, let's go on to record here. I used to know how many fights you had in your NHL career. I'm sure you know, though.
I think it's close to 30. I think it was
30. Okay. Yeah. What was your record in those fights, would you say? I mean, just ballpark it.
I would say that I probably won 50% of them, maybe
so 15. Yeah.
But then there's draws, and there's others you just clearly got beat.
How many did you clearly get beat in?
Probably about, I'd say 5 or 6 of them. I remember I fought, go ahead. Yeah.
So that makes you 15, 6, and 9.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I just was curious.
But I remember Perry Anderson was playing for the St. Louis Blues, I think it was. And I think I'd fought him before. And I thought, okay, I needed to get the team going. It was a home game. So I'm going to go after him and I'm going to fight him. Well, I don't know what he just beat me. I don't know if I fell or whatever it was. Either way, he won the fight. And I actually saw the video recently. What a demoralizing, especially you're at home. Your team. I was right in front of our bench. And that's the thing about the fighters too. That's one of the things that you realize when you get there, that you realize, okay, I can lose a lot of these fights. And it's really not the fear of the physical fear. It's that your teammates looking at you like, Tommy, you let us down. The fans are disappointed in you and everything. And yeah, people say, well, you showed up for the fight, so that's good. But man, that's the thing. I remember watching, the guys that I just look back at and totally admire. Like we do that show every week with Larry Melnick, and he fought Dave Brown one time. We looked at this video, and I've watched it over and over now. And it wasn't just the fact that he beat Dave Brown in the fight, and Brown was the heavyweight champion of the league at that time, but it was the way Larry fought him. Like he realized he could get knocked out any second, but he was just standing back there and throwing bombs. And I admire those guys. You talk to them now, it's one of the toughest jobs in the league. Guys hated doing it, but if they wanted to play in the NHL, they had to do it.
So when we see on the bench, when a guy's got his clocks cleaned and he's got hell beat out of him, and he gets back to the bench, they're all congratulating, "Attaboy, way to go," but they're really thinking, "My God, you really let us down." Do you think that's true?
There's a mix, right? I mean, again, it depends on the situation. So it's a guy that's maybe not like in that case with Larry Melnick and Dave Brown. So before the fight started, you're thinking, okay, Brown is clearly the heavyweight champ of the league. Larry's a tough guy. Larry's fought lots of guys. He can handle himself fine. But you're thinking, okay, Larry's probably going to get beat in this fight. You admire him for standing there and throwing the punches, but he's probably going to get beat. So if he'd lost the fight, we still would have been like, wow, Larry, good job standing in there fighting him. So the fact that he won the fight was like, oh my God, I remember the bench. And I'm going to pick on a guy here, and I like to. So Mike Johnson was like a third line player in the NHL, does a fantastic job on TV now, do a lot of broadcasting. And I saw him doing a game one time, and a fight happened. It's kind of a meaningless fight, but clearly the one player got into the fight to try to help his team get fired up. They were flat, and that's what fighters do sometimes. They pick a situation and say, okay, my team's flat. I've got to go out there and fight somebody. So when the fight happened, Mike was getting questioned by the play-by-play guy, and Mike asked him. They basically asked Mike, "Does that work? Do you get fired up more as a player when somebody goes out there and gets in a fight?" And Mike said, "No, it never works." And I was like, "Well, you've got to make it work. That's your role as that." Grind. Like for my role, I was an assistant captain, third or fourth defense, whatever. When a guy went out and got into a fight to get our team going, that was my job to make sure that we reacted appropriately. That guy, whether he really did, spur you on or not, he did his job. So now it's our job to follow through with that and get some life going on the bench. So it is interesting, the fighters. I mean, it is funny now. Probably 99 out of 100 of the guys that were fighters that you thought just loved fighting, you talk to them now, they hated fighting. They didn't like the role at all.
Well, it's interesting because we now say things like fighting doesn't have a role in the game anymore. And certainly it's not as big a role as it was in the past. I mean, I think that is the truth. But I think fighting still has a role. Certainly physical play has a role. Intimidation has a role. And I'll give you an example. In the last game that the Red Wings played before last night, they were beaten 5-1 by the Boston Bruins. And in that game, Nemestikov, who's not really considered a fighter, but has had a NHL fighting majors, ended up getting a fight with Marchand. And the Bruins were the Bruins. They were the more physical team. They went after the Red Wings hard. They're hard to play against, and they gave them grief. Afterward, Detroit captain Dylan Larkin, and being asked about the physical play, said, well, what I've noticed is when someone plays physical against us, we're mediocre. He said, we need to have more pushback.
Ooh, that's a big statement.
I thought it was. I thought it was a call to arms. Yeah. That's what I thought it was.
Totally.
And last game, Giovanni Smith. Giovanni Smith, who's been sort of in and out of the lineup. The Red Wings haven't been all that pleased with him. He's a very physical player, very intimidating. Hasn't really played that role as much. And, even Jeff Blashill said, I'm not giving him enough playing time really to sort of establishment. So it's kind of a catch-22. Mm-hmm. But I need him when he's out there to do something. And he really hasn't done a whole lot. Right. But last night he did. Yep. He came out. The captain said everybody needs to be more physical. He was more physical. He got into a fight. He even got thrown out of the game. Jeff Blashill said afterward that he wasn't displeased by what Rasmussen or what Giovanni Smith did. He felt, he said, as a coach, I'm the one that says we got to not attack players in a vulnerable position. So, I'm not going to be hypocritical and say my guy shouldn't have been ejected. However, I'm not going to say, that was a horrible play and a penalty. Right. The other thing I thought that his coach also, that Larkin's coach also answered. He moved giant Michael Rasmussen from the third line to the second line to play with Pius Suter, who's, as Blashill calls him, one of our littles. Right. So I guess you have bigs and littles, and he's a little. Yeah. And Rasmussen played in that line, and afterward, Blashill said, lost in the fact that we had two guys that scored 2 goals is the fact that Rasmussen played a great game. And he did. Very noticeable. Hit some guys, got it activated, and he played a role. So I think it still does play a role, and I would say that Giovanni Smith playing the way he did, Rasmussen playing the way he did, I think that did get the Red Wings going, and they end up scoring 6 goals. They've only done that 3 times this season, and they played well. So I think there is, still a role for that. And I thought it was interesting that the captain was the guy that called for it.
That's a major move for a captain to be making a bold statement like that. He's calling out his team. He's got to sit in that same locker room as those guys. It says a lot. I mean, it seems like the team really respects him a lot too. Yeah,
he's a very well-liked guy, not just by his team, but around the league. I've had conversations with him that, you remember a few years ago when Sidney Crosby and a couple others, after the Penguins, I think, were out of the playoffs, kind of called around and said, you want to get together and go try to win a world championship over in Canada? I mean, over in wherever it was. And because Crosby called, guys said, Larkin can do that. Yeah. Like Larkin has so many friends among the American program. When Larkin calls you and says, hey, come on, why don't we go try to win a world championship? Like, I think he'd have the ability to do that. And what's interesting is on the night that he called and said that the Red Wings were not being physical enough, Blashill, who came in right after him and really didn't know what he had said, said that he thought that Larkin had been one of the Red Wings' more competitive players, and that's been his MO this season. Like, he's playing hard. Like, he's hard to play against. He's using that speed. He's on you all the time, and he's pushing you. And so, so there's a role for it. But I want to go back to Terry a little bit because we went off on a tangent. And you brought up a good point that we do see the Daniel Cleary situation quite often, actually. We see guys who were like, and Dan Cleary was an exceptional junior player. And I think he was in the junior ranks a little early and, all that. And they thought he was going to be just, the cat's meow. He didn't end up being that, but he ended up being a very effective role player. And we do see like top players from junior who get to the NHL and it just doesn't translate. Like they can't score. And so, the guys like Cleary, who have some feistiness and some spunk and bravado, they become tenacious role players. Like they happened to Niedermeyer, Rob Niedermeyer, who came in as a scorer, and when he left the game, he was one of the best checking centers in the game.
Totally. And I admire those guys too, right? Because there's some pride involved. You're saying, listen, I scored a ton of goals. I'm a goal scorer. I've proven that in junior. And then you get to the NHL, it's not happening. We say, okay, well then I could just quit and go home, or I find a new role for myself. I change my game. And I admire the Clearys and Niedermeyer, that kind of stuff. Totally.
Well, I'm going to throw this theory out to you about Terry, and I want to just get your thought on it, because I may not know what I'm talking about. But I'm going to throw it out there anyway. Okay. Just as a point of discussion. So, Terry has not taken the Niedermeyer Cleary route. He's not a guy who scored a lot before he got there. Now, all of a sudden, he's scoring. Now, he is on a top line. Now, is it possible that when he got brought up before, the Anaheim Ducks were the worst scoring team in the league for a couple of seasons? So half the time he's been there, they've been the worst scoring team in the league. And he was not playing top line minutes. He was down playing on the third line. Could it be that they just didn't have personnel who can help him be who he is now? And now that they do, he's, being the guy he's supposed to be. And, expanded opportunity, I would call it.
So. I agree. I do agree with that. I think it's someone that's on the player. I mean, if a player really wants it bad enough, then he's got to go make it happen. He has to find a way to do it. But having said, players are young. Sometimes they still need to grow up. And so clearly he was. But if there's nobody else there on the team and you're not this dynamic, if you're not Mike Bossy or Connor McDavid or something like that, then, it's, if you're just still a good goal scorer, like a 30 or 40 goal scorer, it's hard to just go do it by yourself. I mean, the teams know, they scout you. They say, listen, this guy's a goal scorer. Make sure you got your checking line against them. But if you've got multiple goal scorers on the team, then you can't just put one line against one player. You've got to make sure you're covering a whole bunch of players. So, no, I agree. I think that's totally accurate. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm going to take this a little bit further here because I read something in Elliot Friedman's The 32 Thoughts, which is just a terrific column every week. It gives you a lot of insight into what's going around in the league. And he talked about whether or not the Oilers should go out and make a move because they're sliding.
Yeah.
They're sliding significantly, and they're tight against the cap. And he just raised the argument, didn't really weigh in one way or the other of how he felt about it, but just said, does it make any sense to give up very valuable assets to try to get a Marc-Andre Fleury or a Sherratt to try to do something now? And I think most people, when it's written that way, are going to say, yeah, does it really? I mean, those are rentals. You're going to give up, a first-round pick and a prospect probably, and you're going to give up a lot. And then you probably aren't going to have success. And then those guys, those assets will be gone forever. So that's the argument against. Now, I can make an argument for, and the argument I would make for is this. I watched this with the Anaheim Ducks, who had John Gibson, who was a terrific goalie. Mm-hmm. But they wasted 3 or 4 of his best years because they had no team to go with him. Right. And Edmonton has Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, and they're going to waste those years if they don't give them a goaltender. And Mike Smith, God bless him. I think people overlooked how well he played last season in Edmonton. He was a pretty good goalie last year, but he's 40 years old, and 40-year-old goalies get hurt. He's essentially been day-to-day since the start of the season, and Koskinen can't do it for an extended period. He's had a couple of good games. So weigh in. Tell me how you see that. Do you give up the assets? Do you just say, well, now's not our time?
Right. So let's say you get Marc-Andre Fleury, whatever the cost is, or a similar goaltender to Marc-Andre Fleury. Does that solve your problems? Are you now all of a sudden that much better of a hockey team that you have a chance to win the Stanley Cup?
No, but I think it buys you a ticket to the lottery, is what I would say. I think it gets you in. You get in, and now if you're in, like the Montreal Canadiens last year, they got a ticket to the lottery and they went all the way. They could have won the big prize, but they didn't. But
I guess my issue is, okay, I'm going to take it this way. I think you're putting a Band-Aid on the problem. So what is the problem there? You've got 2 of the best players in the world in Draisaitl and Connor McDavid, but you can't win consistently. You can't be a contending team. They're just hanging on now for a spot there in the playoffs. So I'm just like, okay, what's the issue then? So what is the issue? So you get 2 great players, and then the team doesn't win. And 2, probably you could argue the 2 best players in the league are on that one team. Why can't they win? Yeah, it's more than goaltending. I watched them play that night against the Rangers, and they're not a contending team. They don't play like a contending team. They don't play like Carolina. They don't play like Florida, Tampa, Rangers who play in Washington. There's no intensity. You just wonder, are they waiting for something? Is Connor McDavid, again, he wasn't that great either. I mean, he's always a threat because of the skill, but he wasn't that guy to sit putting the team on his back and say, I'm going to go win this hockey game. So and we all believe in Kenny Holland, and rightfully so. Kenny Holland, the general manager, has got a long history with the Detroit Red Wings and keeping that team successful and winning championships. So it's clearly he knows what he's doing. I'm looking at the team and going. So
I hired Tom Laidlaw to run that team, and you go in tomorrow. What is your plan? Are you gonna have a 5-year plan and get this thing turned around?
Well, my first thing is, and Dave Tippett, the coach there, has got a good history. But again, I look and go, Gerard Gallant was available. I know I keep beating this drum, but Gerard Gallant was available as a coach, I believe, when they hired Tippett.
Well, that ship has sailed. He's with the Rangers.
Well, I know, but that's my point is, okay, so what? I mean, that's where it all starts to me. And I've come a long way in this because I didn't used to believe that the coaching was as important as it is now. I think coaching has become more important in the National Hockey League than it's ever been. You got younger players coming in now. They need to be coached. They need to be treated differently. It isn't just a matter of, okay, the young guy sits on the bench, the old guys get to play. That's just not the way it's done anymore. So the coach has to wear a lot of hats. He has to get these young players confident enough to play. He has to get the players in the right roles. That's always.
Well, let me just frame your argument. So what you're saying is when you played, it was all about the players, and today it's all about the coaches.
You might be taking that to the extreme.
I'm just kidding you. Go ahead. I think we do understand what you're saying. I mean, it is. The modern game is different.
It is changed. Yes,
It really is. I completely buy what you're saying. I just couldn't resist the shot.
Yeah, I know you did. Yeah, but I used to definitely believe in the theory that coaches got way too much credit when the team won, and they got way too much blame when the team lost too. They were part of the equation, and they still are part of the. I just think a bigger part of the equation now. So to me, clearly Tippett isn't getting the most out of his team. You look at the Rod Brindamores, the Gerard Gallants, those coaches, Cooper there in Florida. In Tampa, it seems like not only do they have talented teams, but they get the most out of those talented teams, and it's just not happening right now in Edmonton. So that's the place I start. I listen. You brought this up several times in Florida with the general manager. That's awful. They got from Chicago.
Bill Zito. Yeah.
Bill Zito. What a great job he did, not necessarily at the top of the lineup, but more at the bottom of the lineup. Maybe need a more competitive team. That's, to me, the place that like Edmonton's got to look at. Say, listen, we got the top end talent. There's no question. Yes, goaltending needs to be fixed. There's no question. We have the talented players at the top end. We need to fix our bottom end. We need to make this team more competitive, more hard to play against. Look at Calgary, what Sutter has done there. They've struggled a bit now. They had the COVID problems. But I remember they came in here to play the Rangers. Man, they were a big, physical, hard team to play against. That has not changed in the National Hockey League over the years. The teams that win have to be big, strong, physical teams. They need goaltending. They need to be able to score goals, all those things. But the size and the ability to use that size has always been there and will always be important in the National Hockey League. It certainly is right now. So that I just don't see that from Edmonton. Like, they're not a hard team to play against.
Yeah, I think you're right in your assessment of the team. I just probably would approach it a little bit differently. I would try to sell out this season in order to get into the playoffs and make a run. I think it's a bad message if you don't try to win all the time. You know, I remember several years ago, Boomeister, when he wanted to leave, and they had the option of trading him, but they really wanted to get in the playoffs. They thought it was important for the franchise. Yep. And as it turned out, I think they didn't make it, and they ended up getting nothing for him. But I thought it was the right thing to do, because sometimes you just got to send a message that, you know, we're in this to compete. Like I understand intellectually it makes sense to announce a rebuild and start over, and just so the fans know what you're doing, and to prepare them that it's going to be miserable for about 5 years or longer. But I think when you got Connor McDavid and you just say, well, we're not right, the mix isn't right, so we surrender this year, I think that's a bad message. So what I would do is, I think you're right, go out, get the coach you want, and, you know, remind the coaching staff that, you know, this summer you're going to make major changes. But for now, you know, you don't get Connor McDavid for 25 years. And Leon Draisaitl. So for this year, you go out and you try to get the best goalie you can get, and you try to get the best defenseman you can get, and you go for it now. And then this summer, you do what you do. But I think you can't surrender. You can't say.
Okay, so article I read today, Arizona's looking to trade that Jacob Chychrun, great young defenseman, son of former NHL Jeff Chychrun, who was a game player himself. And they're expecting a Jack Eichel type return.
Yeah.
Do you do that?
No.
Edmonton, you don't do that.
No, I would go for a rental because we're going to make changes in the summer. Unless you have pieces that you don't mind, giving up. But I like, but you know, like, they're going to want a good young quality defenseman, and although I will say, who's the guy that they have there? They have a real young player that everybody likes.
In where, Arizona?
No, in Edmonton. Yeah, I'm just drawing a blank on it. But anyway,
what you're thinking about that though? Here's the thing. While you're talking, I'm saying, all right, Columbus. 3 years ago now? They went for it with all those guys, right? Bobrovsky, they didn't trade at the deadline. They lost him as a free agent. So where's Columbus now? Has Columbus benefited from that decision to keep all those guys and then lose them?
If you want to make that argument, you know, you're going to always say you should never do that, because over the course of time, you know, it's always better to keep delaying, and but at some point, you know, the reason we like sports is we want to compete. And I think you got to go for it, even though, you know, over the course of time that it could hurt you. I mean, you can't not, if you give up assets this year for 2 rentals, over the long term, that will hurt you. Like, there's no doubt about it. However,
But then again, you look at Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh was always giving up draft picks and everything too, right?
Yeah.
Young players, and they stayed competitive all the time.
But I think you send a message to players like, we're in it. We're going. We're trying to play. This is sports. We're trying to win. Now. And
I hear you, and I don't want to, but I'm sitting there, I'm thinking, okay, why can't those players now compete? Why are they not competing? That's what I see that they're not doing.
Yeah, well, they look pretty good early. So I think it's an inconsistency, but maybe they're waiting for something to happen, as you mentioned, and they want to see a sign too. Are you with us? They're looking at Kenny going, "Are you with us?
Sure.
You gonna give us some help?"
And look at Nashville now, and I was very critical of Johansson and what's his name there.
Yeah.
And now they're playing better now. They're playing harder now, right? They're competing now. So that's the problem I see, though, that, okay, where were you for the last 2 or 3 years? All of a sudden now, it's great you're trying to play now, but why weren't you playing hard before?
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I agree that it's frustrating.
That's why I'm looking at Edmonton going, nice. Come on,
well, we're all flawed human beings, Tom. That
is true. I guess not everybody's perfect like you and I, right?
Yeah. Well, that's for sure you. I mean, I don't get up at 3:30, so I'm not perfect.
And it was icy here this morning too. I got a little. Sometimes I get a little arrogant with my physical abilities, and I stepped out of the blacktop and almost landed on my rear end this morning. So it was pretty fun.
Oh man, yeah. Don't break your hip. That's never good.
Hey, we won't be breaking any hips.
Yeah,
breaking concrete.
Yeah,
hey, I got to bring this up. Two things. Brian Duffy brings the first one up, and then Susan brings another up. Did you see Wes McCauley's call on the fight last night, the Detroit game, where he called the fighting penalty? Did you see that?
No, I didn't see it. What did he say?
Everybody knows Wes McCauley's hilarious, right?
He's great.
Goes to the mic's on now and everything. He knows the mic's on, so he gets up there and he goes to two numbers, Red Wing and Boston guys fighting. They go 5 minutes each for fighting, when he gets up there.
Oh, you know what? I saw the end of that. Yeah.
Oh God, he was it's hilarious. And you could tell they kept the camera on him, and even the broadcaster's like, "Here it comes! They're waiting for it."
Yeah,
he was hilarious. He was good. It was good to see that.
Yeah, no, Wes McCauley, and I knew John McCauley, his dad, really, really well, and I loved him, man. And Wes is, in my opinion, is as good as they come as an official. And not only that, he has a tremendous personality.
And some of the outtakes where he's mic'd and he's talking to the players, like he can tell he's got that great personality, and that means a lot with the players. Like he's always talking to the guys, keeping things under control, explaining what he's doing. Funny.
Last night Jeff Blashill said after the game on the call of the ejection, he said it was Wes McCauley.
Yeah,
he's like he had respect.
Yeah.
If Wes McCauley thinks he should be ejected, then I think he's going to try to protect the players. I'm okay with that.
So Susan writes here too. So probably about a month ago, Connor McDavid had a fantastic goal 1-on-4 against the Rangers. That's been the highlight.
Yeah, that Susan's right on. That's on my list of things I wanted to talk about. Did you see it?
Yes, I did.
The reverse spinorama.
Yeah.
To me was you just don't see that. Cutting him back like that, and then the way. He found it below the space below the crossbar. It was just
back onto his backhand, so his angle was even worse at that point. And get it high like that, man. That was
and 14th goal of the season.
I know
we're not at the halfway point. Like this guy's going to make a run at 30 as a defenseman.
There's some great defensemen in the National Hockey League now. You look at Fox here in New York and. Down in Florida or down in Tampa. Yeah.
I may have brought this up last. I did. Maybe it was on a radio show, but I just was looking up something else and I stumbled upon this though. And because it involves a guy that you really, really like, and I do too. But I was looking up the goals per 60 minutes when defensemen are on the ice. And I was wondering, I didn't go looking for that, but I saw that and I wondered if the top defensemen have the best, kind of legitimate plus minus, like the number of goals scored. Right. So I looked up Roman Josi, and he was at like 0.7, like it was 2.5 versus 1.8. Okay. And I looked up Adam Fox, almost exactly the same. I don't remember the numbers, but it was 0.7 apart for more goals when they were on the ice than given up.
Right. That's interesting. Yeah.
And then I went up and said Victor Hedman, his difference 1.4.
Was that right?
Wow. Yeah. Although the number of goals he's on the ice for was higher. Like it was like 4.5 goals when he's on the ice, 4 and 3.1, something like that. Similar. So it was interesting, yeah. But most of the top defensemen are about 0.7, but Hedman's twice that.
That's an interesting stat. I never thought of that stat.
For goals per 60 minutes. So they look how many you play and how many goals on. Now, the other stat I saw in Friedman's column, which you could have knocked me over with a feather, although the last time I watched Vancouver, I thought Ekman Larson looked pretty darn good. Yeah. Like he was playing a pretty good defensive game. And then I saw a defenseman playing 500 more minutes. No one has given up fewer goals than at 5-on-5 than Ekman Larson.
Wow.
Isn't that a stunning stat?
That is.
Like he's given up like 9 goals.
Wow.
When he's on the ice. Wow. So
we touched on it before there with Chychrun with the Coyotes. A great he's a really good young defenseman too. What are they doing trading him? Like he's under 25.
Because I don't know what they're doing. I've been so disappointed.
Yeah, no kidding.
By this new ownership. I've been very supportive of giving the Coyotes because I felt like, they've never really had an opportunity to show. I mean, they've had either the team wasn't good enough or they didn't have a good enough arena. And then when they got a good arena, it was in the wrong spot. And then the team wasn't good. And I just would like to see what would happen if they could get a good team and, they had the right arena and everything. But now I've lost my zeal for this long, torturous experiment just because, I don't, if you're going to rebuild, I'm fine with that. I mean, that's just the way the world it is now. But the way they've gone about it, where they've traded, younger players, Conor Garland, and now they want to trade Chychrun. What is Keller going to be traded? I mean,
I don't know, man. And like when you get a Chychrun, everybody always says this: you get a good young defenseman like that, you do not trade them. They're hard to find, those kind of guys. So,
yeah.
Hey, I just seen an article here on TSN citing losses of more than $1 billion. NHL sues insurers over rejected COVID-19 claims. So the NHL has submitted claims to their insurance of their losses over $1 billion. The insurance company rejected that. Now the league is suing them. Well, that's a lot of money, $1 billion. Ooh.
Yeah. You know who will win that lawsuit?
The insurance company.
The lawyers.
The lawyers. Yes, you're right. Good point.
The lawyers are going to be the big winner.
Yeah.
So they're going to make just tons of money on both sides.
Yeah, because that's going to go on for years.
Yeah, that is. Yeah. Yeah, lawyers will be big. Although I just saw a story too. This is off sports, but I think you'll find it interesting. 3 professions where people don't pay their bills. 3 professions.
So, okay, lawyers. He's got to be on that category.
Yeah, for sure.
Trying to think of what else. I wouldn't know. I wouldn't know where to go with that.
Dentists.
People don't pay their dentists, really?
People don't like to pay their dentists.
Oh, so. Then hospital bills then.
Veterinarians.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Apparently, you want to save Fido, but you don't want to pay for it. So.
Well, yeah, you want to save Fido until you see the bill and you think, I'm not paying that bill for the damn dog.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you're a farm boy. You look at dogs. And that's perfectly understandable.
So lawyers, dentists, and veterinarians. Well,
I just happened to see an article, and they were just talking about, particularly during COVID when some people were out of work and everything. That you want the lawyer to protect you, but then when his bill comes in, you're going, whoa. So, and that's why people got to. Why lawyers take large retainers, and why the vets tell you, can you pay half up front? So,
what happens when the vet doesn't get paid? I mean, you can't come and take the dog back, right? I mean, you take the dog.
No, I mean, you just end up in collection and you get a percentage, and
Okay, so your dog's sick, you take it to the vet. The dog obviously must survive or whatever. The vet fixes them, then you send the bill. So now, I guess if the dog gets sick again, now you got to find another vet. I guess there's lots of vets around. So.
Yeah, but I do remember when I had my pit bull Rocky. Who lived to be 17 years old. And I loved my Rocky. And so our vet said, I think this is when he was like 13. and said, I think he's got a little heart issue. I hate to ask you this, but I would like to send him to a dog cardiologist. And I started laughing because, like who thinks dogs have cardiologists? And I said, well, what's it going to cost? And she said, $500 or $600. I said, $500 or $600 for Rocky? I'm in. Yeah. But I will tell you a funny story. So we go to the cardiologist.
So this is a regular cardiologist or a dog?
No. This is just an animal vet specialist. Okay. And we go, and they have a lot of people there, and they're going to have to put my pit bull on a table. And I said, do you want me to come in and I'll put Rocky on the table? And he says, oh, well, we're vets. We know we can handle it. And I said, are you sure? Because, I said, Rocky, trust me. And if I pick my dog up and put him on the table, he's not going to react whatsoever. He's used to me picking him up. He knows when I pick him up, he's safe. I said, he's going to be a handful. Like, he's not going to bite anybody, but he's going to be squirmy, and he's not going to be good, and he's strong. I said,
he's a big dog too. I remember.
Yeah. And they said, we think we got this.
Yeah, we got it.
So we're out in the waiting room, my wife and I, just waiting. It's going to take, 20 minutes or whatever. All of a sudden, we hear this large commotion in there. And, there's things banging around and things are falling, and you can hear it going on. And I look at Terry. I said, they must be trying to put him on the table. And sure enough, when she comes out, the doc says, his heart is fine. It's just a slight murmur. And she goes, but we should have listened to you and let him put him on the table.
That is good.
I said, it would have been no problem. I said, trust me. He's used to me. I used to sneak up behind him and just pick him up. Right. And it would.
I guess if you're a vet, you think you're calm, but I would have listened to you too. Yeah, to me, that's
no. It's my dog. Like, he just. It's for dogs. It's about trust. He would just look at me and say, why are you picking me up again? So. Anyway, for whatever that's worth.
Yes. Good job.
Yeah.
So you're dogless right now, right? You don't have a dog.
I am dogless. It's a sad story, but yes, although I will say that, we had to give up our pit bull. We had a neighbor who didn't like our pit bull, and it was kind of causing some issues. And, human feelings are more important, even though I liked my pit bull. And but it was a rescue pit bull. So we called the rescue people and said, look, we have to get rid of our pit bull, but we want to make sure it goes to a proper family. Everything is, well, don't worry, we'll just adopt her out again. So we end up do adopt her out, and it's a family with kids, because they were thrilled that we had photos of my pit bull interacting with all my grandkids, and that he was friendly with kids. Right. And the only problem is he's flight risk, and my grandkids kept letting him out, and he kept going in my neighbor's yard. That was the biggest problem. I have 5 acres, and there's no fence, and so my pit bull would just go say hello to the neighbors. And they didn't like it. But anyway, we keep asking how the pit bull is doing, and they say okay. And right before Christmas, they sent us a photo of him with her with his new family, and they have put my pit bull in pajamas and posed it with the family. Although I will say she looked quite cute in those.
That's funny.
So anyway, so we, as my wife said, I think we made the right decision. So,
how was your wife feeling? She wasn't feeling too good, right? She
went to the doctor and was diagnosed with her annual case of bronchitis. She didn't get, the only time she hasn't gotten bronchitis in the last 5, 6, 7 years was when the first year of COVID, when we didn't really leave the house. But she just gets it, and it's funny because not funny, but. The doctor, when she got it the first year, she goes, unfortunately, this bronchitis will come back every year. And sure enough, she gets, she just, and the cough is just ugly, so, and because she coughs, like people think she has COVID, they run the other way, so, anyway. Well, as usual, we've run out of time, but we talked a lot of hockey today. This is a hockey show, so I hope you guys enjoyed that. But if you want to read me, I'm at DetroitHockeyNow.com. I'm also at HockeyBuzz.com.
And if you want to listen to the radio version of this show, you can go to radio.co at 365 Sports. Again, that's radio.co at 365 Sports. It is Wednesday today. I guess we'll see everybody next week.